Now on American Top 40, listen to this. 25 years ago, that song launched a string of 45 hits for the #1 American male group in chart history. And they're still working. Our tribute on their 25th anniversary is coming up.
The hits from coast to coast. American Top 40.
Now the biggest American male group of the rock and roll years. They had 13 songs in the top 10, and 4 of them were #1. Quite a few of their hits had short one-word titles such as Beggin', Ronnie, Dawn, Alone, Stay, and Sherry. At #8 in the rankings, here are the Four Seasons.
American Top 40.
Well, I guess the 1960s will be remembered for giving us short skirts and long hair, big missiles and small cars, and a pop vocal group whose lead singer had a falsetto voice that could shatter plate glass windows or sell 1 million records just about any time its owner felt like cutting loose. His name is Frankie Valli, and fortunately for his associates, he felt like it often enough to let them hit the chart 35 times in 8 years. 13 of those in the top 10, and 4 at #1, which makes them the 26th biggest recording act of the rock and roll era. This one's from 1965. Let's hang on. The Four Seasons.
There ain't no good in our goodbye.
At number 26 in our exclusive, newly tabulated countdown of the 40 top recording acts of the rock and roll era, The Four Seasons.
American Top 40.
Well, now on American Top 40, it's time for the new #1 song by an artist who becomes the third male solo singer in the last 6 months to return to the chart after a long absence and go all the way to the top with his comeback hit. Several months ago, Paul Anka started the big comeback trend by hitting #1 with his first chart record in 5.5 years. That was You're Having My Baby. He was followed by a top singer of the late 50s and early 60s, whose return to the charts in February of this year was even more dramatic. After a dry spell of 11 years, Neil Sedaka returned to hit the top with Laughter in the Rain. And this week, a third singer pulls it off. Although he's had several chart hits as a solo artist, his last appearance in the 40 was 7 years ago as the lead singer for one of the most successful vocal groups of the 60s, the Four Seasons. And they got to number 24 with Will You Love Me Tomorrow. But this week, he moves into the top spot once again on his own. At #1, here's Frankie Valli and My Eyes Adored You.
American Top 40.
Here's a singer who's had an interesting career. He's charted 36 times with the Four Seasons. He's charted 8 times by himself, and he did it 4 times with a group who were really the Four Seasons, who called themselves the Wonder Who. Got as high as number 12 in 1965 with Don't Think Twice. That's where he really used a high voice. Here he is, Frankie Valli, soloing this time with Swearing to God.
American Top 40.
Well, now on American Top 40, it's time for the current smash by a popular vocal group whose biggest hit, a #1 song, was inspired by a scene from an old movie. It was an obscure 1930s-style melodrama that came on the Late Late Show on television in New York City one night back in 1962. One of the viewers in the TV audience was writer-producer Bob Crew. He'd been working for several hours trying to come up with a song for the follow-up to the first #1 smash he'd produced for this group, called Sherry. But the words weren't coming. Bob fell asleep on the couch in front of the TV. And when he woke up, it was right in the middle of the big emotional scene in the film, where the male star slapped his pretty female co-star across the face. And to Bob's delight and good fortune, she replied, "Big girls don't cry."
Big girls they don't cry. Big girls don't cry. Who said they don't cry?
Well, he loved the line, and along with former group member Bob Gaudio, he turned it into a pop song that became the biggest #1 song the Four Seasons have ever had. This week, they fall 7 notches with a song that just missed #1. Last week, it peaked at number 3. At number 10 in the countdown on American Top 40, here are the Four Seasons and Who Loves You.
Who loves you?
He's coast to coast. American Top 40.
This is Casey Kasem on AT40 in Hollywood, and the 11th most popular girl of the rock era was the first hit ever for a vocal group who had 4 other top 40 singles named after women: Marlena, Dawn, Ronnie, and Come On Marianne. This was a potent group who started out in '62 and ran off a string of big hits, took a long break in the early '70s, and then stormed right back in '74 and '75 to increase their chart totals to 15 top 10s and 5 number 1s. Well, the girl who started it all was Sherry. Here are Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons.
Sherry, American Top 40.
I'm Casey Kasem. Well, now an American Top 40 Extra. The biggest hit that Frankie Valli has ever had, with or without the Four Seasons. The 3 biggest hits on which Frankie has sung lead or solo are Sherry, Big Girls Don't Cry, and Grease. And the biggest of all from 1962 was this one.
Big girls don't cry. Big girls.
Now, listen to this.
Sherry, baby,
That song, Sherry, came out in 1962 and launched a string of 45 hits for a 4-man group out of New Jersey. They're the number 1 American male singing group in chart history. And this year, they're celebrating their 25th anniversary. And they haven't slowed down at all. They still play 100 dates a year.
Oh, how you tried to cut me down to size, telling dirty lies to my friends.
It all began for them back in 1955 in the city of Newark. Francesco Stephen formed a group called the Varietones. Over the next few years, band members and band names came and went. But by 1962, the lineup was set. Bob Gaudio, Nick Massey, Tommy DeVito, and Francis Castelluccio, who changed his name, by the way, to Frankie Valli. Then they took the group's name from a Newark bowling alley, a place called the Four Seasons. The singing Four Seasons began their hit streak with the number 1 smash Sherry. Then they racked up a string of classics throughout the 60s and 70s, including Big Girls Don't Cry, Walk Like a Man, and Working My Way Back to You. Then, in 1976, with a few membership changes, the Four Seasons had their biggest chart topper with this song.
Oh, what a night. Late December back in '63.
It hit number 1 in 1976. The Four Seasons with December 1963, Oh, What a Night. Frankie Valli, of course, while part of the group, also scored a few solo classics. Can't Take My Eyes Off of You, My Eyes Adored You, and the title song from the hit movie, Grease. The Four Seasons had a total of 45 chart records. 30 of them made the top 40, and 5 went to number 1. On the singles chart, they're the number 1 American male singing group in chart history. This year, they're celebrating their silver anniversary. 25 years of Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. And the countdown continues on American Top 40.
American Top 40.